Hi, I'm Steve Humble. I'm from the Liberal Democratic Party. A lot of people get our party confused with the Liberal Party because the name sounds a little bit similar. There's a big difference. We're not actually connected to the Liberal Party at all. The Liberal Democrats are a small political party, and the actual Liberal Party are not liberal at all. They're more of a conservative party, so their name is actually quite misleading. So the Liberal Democrats really are a libertarian party, and we've actually supported marijuana legalisation since the party's inception in 2001. It's almost 20 years ago now. It's been a policy from day one. I joined the party in about 8 years ago, and I got into the party because of bike helmet laws. I like to be able to have a choice to ride without a helmet. One of the things big government does is it takes away people's freedom of choice, and when you take away people's freedom of choice, it takes away people's dignity. And that's very damaging to the way people feel about their life and the way they do things. Dignity is something that I think everyone needs to have to feel good about what they're doing, and to sort of have that respect of government to say, yeah, you're not actually a convict anymore, you people here. You should have the right to smoke weed if you want, to ride a bike without a helmet if you want, to smoke if you want, to drink, to do the things that you want to do. We are also a small government party. One thing I looked at when I was doing my research last night was there's actually 3 different parties at the moment, I think maybe 4 now, who are supporting marijuana legalisation. So Mark Eldridge just chatting a little earlier, that's really good that they're running this time. And we've also got the Greens changed their policy about 6 months ago, and of course you've got the hemp party. And I thought I'd just talk a little bit about preferences while I'm here as well. And I made a very good analogy last night on how to vote. You actually use your preferences. I describe it as like going to the shops. You might ask a friend, go and buy me a bucket of chocolate ice cream from the shop. And so they go off there. Turns out there's no ice cream at the shop. So they come back with a packet of peanuts, and you go, what the hell? This isn't going to be any use to me. I don't want peanuts. With preferences, what you're essentially doing is saying, get me a bucket of chocolate ice cream, but if they run out of that, then get me a bucket of vanilla. And if they run out of that, get me a bucket of toffee or something instead. So with preferences, you can say, oh, okay, I may not get the chocolate ice cream that I wanted, but I can get something that's a little bit closer to it. So when you're going to vote, my suggestion is choose all the marijuana legalisation parties right up front on your ballot paper, because then you're more likely to get marijuana legalisation than some of these big parties like Liberal Labor, who have always been opposed to it. I think one thing that's interesting is my party have actually had several people elected to government in the past. David Linehan was our first member of federal parliament, and even though he was the first one of our party to be elected to government, it was the very first time in 2018 that anyone had ever proposed legalisation of recreational marijuana in the Australian Parliament. He actually, I think, set a record on that. Of course, the big parties instantly opposed it and brought out their nanny state excuses, like there might be someone who gets schizophrenia or whatever else, or there might be someone who has some issue when they're driving with it or something like that. So it basically got shut down by the big parties. But in spite of that, we have actually run the nanny state inquiry, which brought a lot of sort of new light onto the subject of marijuana legalisation. We've managed to get the word out there even to other parties. I think we might have actually been instrumental in getting the Greens to change their policy, because we had been promoting legalisation long before they even thought of it. So, and I'm actually going to be running in this upcoming federal election. I'll be running with the Liberal Democrats, obviously. I'm hoping that if one of us gets elected once again, we'll be able to carry forward that work and act as a champion for legalisation in the federal parliament. I also, while I'm here, I just thought, I know there's a whole bunch of parties who want to legalise now. I've just mentioned 4 of them. I thought I'd just compare the Greens and the Liberal Democrats policy. I came across a document on the Australian Parliament House website last night, which compares the two sort of recreational marijuana policies that have been proposed in Parliament. You can just look it up on Google, it's pretty straightforward. I think one of the best descriptions of it is the Liberal Democrats' legalisation policy is a little bit like what's going on in California, Washington and Colorado in the United States, where you've basically got people able to grow recreationally in their backyard and smoke it and so on as much as they want. And then you've also got a retail where places can get a licence and they can sell the marijuana to tourists and people who want to buy cakes or whatever with marijuana infused products in them. So the Liberal Democrats is very much a free market sort of party, and that's the sort of model that we're chasing. The Greens model is a little bit more like the country of Uruguay, where the government has a sort of agency and very, very tight control over the production of marijuana and the sale of marijuana. So they're both good policies, I think, but I think for a Western country like Australia, the Liberal Democrats' policy naturally sort of goes in with the way we do things here in our sort of laissez-faire economy. So, but yeah, you've got all those options, and I think you can choose your order on the ballot paper and preferences and make your mind up which you prefer. And I think putting them all first is really good. I thought another thing I did, I actually ran in the state election a couple of years ago now. I think that was 2018, 2017. We actually submitted our state marijuana legalisation policy to the Parliamentary Budget Costing Services in the election. I think we were the very first party to ever actually submit such a policy, and I got some really good information back from the budget officers who provided us with a report. I think I've got it on our Facebook page before it got shut down by Facebook's censorship algorithms. But it describes a whole bunch of the ins and outs, and we got commentary from the police department, we got commentary from a whole bunch of people, and they put together the costing of it and how it would affect the government. One of the things that we got back from them was that it would save the South Australian government around about $10 million a year in policing costs. That was the cost of the police going around busting people, the cost of people being locked up in jail, the cost of the legal system, all the judges and the courthouses and things like that. And also, I think there was one other thing in there, but $10 million worth of costs which we can avoid by legalising marijuana. Part of that was also our scheme for recreational marijuana licensing. So our scheme is basically you can grow as much as you want, wherever you want, and do whatever you want with it. But if you want to sell it, we did have a clause there where you actually need to get a license. So we'd treat it a little bit like alcohol, where at the moment you can brew your own alcohol and you can drink it as much as you want and give it to your friends, whatnot. But if you want to sell it, then you get an alcohol license. So our model for marijuana legalisation was based on that. So they gave us a costing on that, and it was going to be like, I think about $500 a year to get a license, so absolutely dirt cheap. And a cafe could get one of these licenses and sell marijuana cakes or smokes or little bags of weed or whatever you want. And it was a no-profit scheme. The government was not going to make a cent out of it, except in GST. So our viewers, government shouldn't be making a profit out of other people's sort of enjoyment of life. And so we weren't going to apply any excise to it. The only sort of excise is basically the GST that you pay on practically everything.
Just get home growing.
Sorry?
Just get home growing, you'll be right.
Yeah, well, home growing. There's another interesting thing.
Let us treat ourselves.
One of the reasons for legalising recreational is actually to get rid of the cost of the Therapeutic Goods Administration's licensed products. Now, to get something licensed as a medical product in Australia, it actually costs millions of dollars, and there's fees to the Therapeutic Goods Administration, and it ends up costing millions of dollars. So if you actually want to get medical marijuana in Australia at the moment, you end up paying about $1,000 a month. It can be like $10,000 a year. Not many people can afford that kind of thing. That's more than many people pay in rent. So going for recreational legalisation gives you full access to every product from anywhere. You can make it yourself, you can buy it off other people. So it completely overcomes all that cost of the government bureaucracy and their restrictions on it. So recreational legalisation actually covers a whole bunch of other areas. Another thing, in 2017, our government in South Australia made a new act to allow for industrial growing of marijuana in South Australia. There's a few problems to that act, because anyone who actually wants to do it has to pay a fee of over $1,000, and then once they've got that fee paid, they have to have every single member of their family go through a police background check. Any of their associates go through a police background check. So it actually can take a very long time to actually get your license approved because of all this scrutiny by the police. Anyone who they think is associated with some criminal or has a past criminal record basically is blocked from being able to grow it industrially. And then on top of that, the department in charge of it can send someone out to your farm once you're growing it and charge you about $170 an hour for travel time and the amount of time they spend on your farm, and they bill that to you. And they can turn up without a warrant at any time they choose and spend as much time as they want on your property. So they could turn up, and at the end of the day you end up with like a $2,000 bill just for them to go and check your crops and make sure you've got the electric fence and the cameras and you haven't invited anyone there who shouldn't be there, and you've got the logs and all that sort of rubbish. So as far as I know, there may only be one person in the whole of South Australia who's actually even managed to get a license, and more likely that's a very large company with the sort of resources to sweet talk the government and be able to afford all those ridiculous costs. So it's basically locked all the small hobby farmers out who might want to grow it as a boutique product or produce some medical cannabis thing. It's virtually impossible to get in there, because if you even get through the police background check, there's all these ridiculous costs. So with the Liberal Democrats, we're basically going to eliminate all that stuff. I'll just read a quick summary of our policy. Our policy is to legalise the use, possession, cultivation, processing, transport and sale of marijuana by adults. So that basically covers everything. And our model is basically going to follow the Canadian model, California, and will basically be bringing Australia up to the very latest sort of libertarian policy in terms of marijuana legalisation. So anyway, I think I've talked enough for now. And hopefully you guys will vote for me. Look out for the Liberal Democrats on the ballot paper. I don't know where we'll be in the order yet, but I'll be in there. And please vote for us. Thank you for listening. If you've got any questions, just come up and ask me. And also I've got some cigarette lighters with our branding on them and a little sort of legalised marijuana logo. So pop up and see me. I've got a few of those around. So if you're after a lighter, come and see me. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Steve. You got the lighters, Steve? I do.